Welcome back to Warehousing Unboxed, an IWLA podcast. Today we're unboxing a hot topic that affects a number of warehouse owners across America and around the world: the trials and tribulations of running a family-owned business. Today's episode is entitled Family, Freight, and Friction: Life Inside a Family-Owned 3PL. At IWLA, a large portion of our membership is represented by family-owned businesses, and we're going to talk to a few warehouse leaders who have been operating in North America for decades, and they have some great stories to share. Today, we'll be joined by Jordy Wills, president of Wills Transfer Limited, Jerry Van Pufflin, chairman and founder of Prism Logistics, and Jeremy Van Pufflin, president of Prism Logistics. On a side note, we are less than 2 weeks from the IWLA Annual Convention and Expo in Tucson, Arizona. So as you can imagine, things are chaotic here at the headquarters. So I've locked my door. I've carved out the next half hour of the podcast. But if you hear some crazy sounds, chaos, perhaps screaming, shuffling, and footsteps in the background, I apologize for all that. But there's a lot of hard work that goes into this premier industry event. And our staff is amazing, and they are buzzing and ready to power up your warehouse at the JW Marriott in Tucson, Arizona. So we've got some great speakers, some great sessions, some great surprises planned for you. You spoke and we listened, and we really have a great event lined up for you. So really looking forward to that in Tucson, Arizona. So again, if you're anything in the background, that's what that's all about. But that'll do it for the intro. We'll hear a few words from our great sponsors, and we'll be right back with Jordy, Jerry, Jeremy, and JC as we discuss family, freight, and friction: life inside a family-owned 3PL.
Enveo is the industry's most trusted provider of logistics data management, visibility, and shipping optimization software, helping 3PLs of all sizes move their logistics forward through data-driven technology. Leading 3PLs including NFI, Kenco, Geodis, Saddle Creek Logistics, IDS Fulfillment, and more put their trust in Enveo to streamline operations, scale revenue, and optimize the shipment lifecycle from order through delivery. Bring the #1 data plus technology solution to your operations and connect with the Enveo team at www.enveo.com.
Welcome back to Warehousing Unboxed, an IWLA podcast. Today's topic is family, freight, and friction: life inside a family-owned 3PL. And today we are joined by some warehouse leaders who have been operating in North America, and they have some great stories to share. They've been doing it for some time. We'll welcome in first Jordy Wills from Wills Transfer Limited. Jordy, how are you doing today?
I am doing awesome. Just enjoying some spring weather here, just north of the border. We're in Eastern Ontario, so yeah, happy to be here. By the way, with all the J's on the call today, if things don't work out for us, let's do a podcast for the 4 J's.
There you go. And we've got Jay Strahler. And yeah, Jay Strahler's in the office next to me, so we'll do 5.
Oh, let's bring him on.
Good deal. All right. And Jerry, how are you doing today? Jerry Van Pufflin.
Doing great. I'm actually calling in from Savannah, Georgia. I'm at the AWI conference down here. So I'll be heading into that meeting as soon as we get off the podcast.
Good deal. Well, thanks for joining us. And Jeremy's joining us here too. Jeremy, where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from our base here in Northern California, right outside San Francisco in the Central Valley. And yeah, it's nice out here as well. A little cool today, but beautiful weather as Northern California usually offers, and excited to be a part of the call.
Good deal. Well, thanks to all of you for taking some time out. I know you have very busy schedules. It's crazy here, as I mentioned, planning for the big event. We're excited about our annual expo, our convention and expo in Tucson, Arizona. That's next week. Everyone on this call will be at that convention. So if you hear the podcast and you want to say something to one of us, we'd love to talk to you about it as well. And I'd love to see you out at the convention too. It's going to be my first go around, so I'm really excited about it. I'm Jay Capron. I go by JC here at IWLA. And that's because, like we said at the beginning of the show, there's too many J's around. We've got Jay Strahler, so I go by JC here at IWLA. So, Jordy, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about Wills Transfer first. What do you guys do?
Sure. So we're in the heart of the Canadian supply chain in Eastern Ontario. We're between Toronto and Montreal. We're not in Toronto or Montreal. We've got 7 warehouses, about 1 million square feet, and about 30 trucks. And so I'm 4th generation. I took over for my father, Terry, who stepped into an advisory role a little over a year ago. And we're celebrating 80 years this year. So I am in a very, very fortunate situation to have taken over a company with strong values and just kind of look to what that next direction is for us. And it's exciting.
That's awesome. So fourth generation. And so your warehouses, what type of product do you operate? Pretty much everything or what?
So the industries we serve is oil and lubricants, manufacturing, healthcare, food, and then there's some federal government and some other kind of project-based stuff. Essentially, Ottawa is a fairly restricted city in terms of commercial real estate. So we'll have projects come, like right now we're doing our parliament. They're redoing our parliament, so that's a 10-year project. And so we're doing some of the creating and storage for that project as an example. But our kind of the main base is manufacturing, and there's a fair bit of manufacturing in Eastern Ontario. So that's who we support from on the vendor side. So as they purchase their products, we set up agreements with those vendors, and then we also do the finished goods. And so our goal is to make the manufacturing as easy as possible. So helping with vendors shunting trailers for production, and then bringing finished goods back.
Very cool. That's Jordy Wills from Wills Transfer Limited, and we're going to hear more about the early days. 80 years. I'm curious to have you tell us at least what you know about some of the early days. And we'll bring in Jerry Van Pufflin now, the founder and president, or founder and chairman. Is that correct, Jerry?
That's correct. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Prism Logistics and what you and Jeremy do.
Yeah, we started Prism in 1993. And in a little 48,000 square foot facility. I'll let Jeremy tell you more about where we are today. But my original partner and I, who's since retired, loaded and unloaded trucks. My wife was in the office, and she ran the office and signed drivers in and out and ran the inventory. And we did the trucks and the recoup and the sweeping and the cleaning the toilets and everything else that was needed to get the business up and running. And we've been very blessed. We no longer have that small facility in Benicia, but we have 7 facilities across Northern California, and have 3 sons, two of which are in the business. The third one was in the business, but he was in the Marines for 11 years, and he decided that he wasn't sure that he liked the warehouse business. And I said, if you don't love it, you got to get it out because it'll eat you up. And so he went and started his own thing and is doing very well in that. And my other 2 boys are Jeremy's running the company now, and his brother Zach is doing a lot of internal stuff, IT, customer service, transportation. So yeah, that's where we are, and I'll let Jeremy tell you more about what we do today.
Yeah, let's do that, Jeremy. So where have you expanded to? So no longer the 48,000 square foot place that started it all, but where are you guys at now?
Yeah, as Jerry mentioned, we are now in 7 locations across Northern California. So we've got some of the Bay Area, the Central Valley, West Sacramento, really just focused on that regional organic growth here. There have been several opportunities over the years to jump into other markets and do some different things for clients. And we've always felt that, I guess from the start, that we really want to be the best in our market. And in order for us to be able to do that, it takes us putting our focus and attention in that market. So we like to keep things within a couple hours drive or within an hour's flight at the most, so that we can be on site as needed. But yeah, it's 7 locations, but just about 2.5 million square feet at this point in time. Primarily food, beverage, consumer packaged goods, a little bit of light packaging, different things that we'll do for clients, as well as asset-based and brokerage operation on the trucking side. So it's been a good model for us, and has allowed us to set a pretty good reputation out here in Northern California.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. So as I mentioned at the top, a number of our members are family-owned businesses. Jordy, you said 80 years in business, so I know you're I'm guessing you're around my age, probably even a little younger, so I don't think you could tell me about the early years, but can you tell me at least what you know about the early years and how you guys all started, how you started Will's Transfer?
Yeah, sure can. Let me go back. I think I can remember this stuff. Just give me a minute, okay?
Yep.
No, I'm just kidding. It was so my great grandfather, when he got home from the war, him and his 18-year-old son, my grandfather, so George and Osborne, they bought three stake trucks, like a modern 5-ton with that's not covered. And so what was happening in Canada, in this part of Canada, was the country was being, just like the US, it was being rebuilt and injected money into the economy. Homes were being built. And so we had a large rail yard. We do still have a large rail yard, Canadian Pacific, which is now CPKC. And there was a large terminal in Smith Falls. And so cars would come in and be offloaded for the Ottawa Valley. So there's a bunch of small rural communities close to Ottawa. And so we would offload one client, for example, there was a large health facility that housed up to about 900 patients. So it was the biggest employer in our founding town of Smith Falls, where head office is still today. So those bricks would come in, and those were hand bombed off, put onto these trucks, out for delivery. And then we had a number of clients where we would do pickups in the afternoon and reload boxcars at night. So the beginnings were like entrepreneurial hard work, grandfather, great grandfather, great grandmother, grandfather, grandmother, hands-on in the business. And just a really quick history, we spent the majority of our last 80 years as a moving agent for United Van Lines. So we were one of the first Canadian moving companies. We have since closed our moving about 12 years ago, which allowed us to focus on the commercial side of warehousing and to become a full third-party logistics provider in terms of our systems, inventory capabilities. How do you partner with a global national, even if you're a small guy, and align your systems and processes and health and safety to add value to their business? So it's been a long journey. The last 12 years or so has been exciting, because we feel when we closed our moving division, there was many good years in that, and it contributed a lot to who we are in terms of how we want to treat our people and how we want to treat the customer. And I think we've taken the good from that and applied it to our business today. But it's also freed us, because there was many challenges with moving individual homes, and there was a lot of day-to-day that you could get caught up in that distracted us from strategically looking down the road. So it was the hardest point in our modern history to close that division, but it allowed us to focus on our long-term reoccurring monthly revenue customers that were in our warehouses. So the year's 1979, and we're in Smith Falls, and this was the thing we were known for most was Hershey, Canada. So there was Hershey, Pennsylvania, and Hershey was in Smith Falls. And this is what was the largest in terms of manufacturing. They gave us a call in 1979 because we did some transportation work for them, and they said, we've got a project with glass that we can't have in our facility for these Christmas displays. And so we brought that project in. That project led to a really cool opportunity where they sent some of their vendors, so like cocoa, eggs, flour, and a few other things, they would send their product to Smith Falls via rail or just dry van, refrigerated van. And we would handle those vendors, and then we would shunt it over, for the next 8 hours or 12 hours production and do shunting. And so that was the customer in the background in 1979 that got us into it. So we fell into it. We've fallen into a few other things as well, just based off our geography and getting that phone call. So that's a little bit of a history. Two other industries we were in. We were in intermodal, so we would go in and out of Montreal to pick up sea containers. We closed that division in 2020, and we were in freight. So we had a number of trucks that went to the U.S. We closed that in 2008. So we've divested a few things and been able to focus on the warehouse 3PL space in Eastern Ontario.
Great. Well, thanks for that history. Interesting how you've evolved too. It sounds like both businesses here on the phone have found ways to evolve as things have changed over the years. So, Jordy, is your dad, your father? He's still active, right?
Yeah, he plays an advisory role. So bring them in for executive meetings, senior management meetings, and partner meetings. Those
And
are the three areas.
I'm sorry, what's his name?
Yeah, Terry.
Terry. Okay. So you've worked with your dad. So you don't have to say how old you are, but when did you determine that you did want to get involved in the business and not branch off and go in a different direction?
So I always, yeah. So growing up in a small town, people told me that this was my destiny. And it's funny when people tell you that's your destiny, that can play with you a few different ways. One of them is, well, this is what I have to do. But the way that my dad worked with me, I can't describe it really, but he gave me, both my parents gave me that freedom to explore. I never felt shame, or any sort of guilt or pressure from them. I felt more pressure from, employees or people in a small town that would assume that this is your destiny. And so, I had to work through that. I wouldn't say that I really, really wrestled with it, like I didn't struggle. What happened though was I went to university, met my wife. I got involved in a really cool organization that it's a Christian ministry. So for 5 years at Carleton University in Ottawa, I was involved with this club. We did summer mission trips. We did events on campus. It was really exploring faith as a young person. And so something totally different than, the moving and storage industry. My wife and I ended up working with them for 4 years. So I was like a chaplain on a university. We worked overseas, and we also worked at the University of Guelph near Toronto. So we did something totally different, but we did get advice along the way, and we gave ourselves a window of time, 3 to 5 years. And after 3 to 5 years, we'd reevaluate. So after 4 years, we brought in some people to help us through this decision, some people that know us really well. And it's interesting. It wasn't like a strong desire to get out of this Christian ministry with students, but it was more of like, I think there's something there in business. So we moved back to the town that I grew up in 2013, got involved in the business, started as a moving consultant, which is sales for moving furniture. And, it was really, we didn't tell the staff, hey, the fourth generation has come back to work, but they're not sure. They're not really sure if they're all in or not. So we didn't communicate that message. I mean, the message was I'm come back to work in the business.
Okay.
And so my wife and I were feeling that out, and it only took like 2 months to see how my dad was able to influence people, how much he enjoyed work, how he made the problems fun. He loved challenges. And I just saw how he influenced people. And it was just an honest day's work. And I loved it. So, after
Okay.
2 months, I was all in. And when you're all in, all you're thinking about is like, how do we enhance the people? How do we advance the process? How do we grow the business? And
Sure.
I really haven't looked back, mentally, emotionally, since that feeling out time back in 2013.
That's great. That's great. So, and I worked with my wife at the radio station years ago, and we were able to make it work, but there are challenges that go along with that. And that's kind of where I want to go with this now, Jerry. You mentioned everything from washing toilets at that 48,000 square foot facility back in the 90s. Tell us a little bit about that. What were some of the challenges of working not only with your wife, but with your family and getting your family involved?
Well, it's one of the things that made my decision to leave and start the business was my wife. She had been encouraging me to do that. We had done a couple of turnarounds for other companies, and she said, when are you going to do this for yourself? And so ultimately, that's what we did, and started without a customer in June of 93. And General Mills was our first customer, and we got the first load in September of 93. And just grew from there, and have been very blessed in the business to be able to continue to grow. My wife and I have a great relationship, and the business can at times strain all relationships, but she's just been a great supporter and help and encourager through all the challenges that there are whenever you're starting a business, and just very positive at reinforcing, let's go, we can get this done. So that's been great. And all the boys started out the same way, on the end of a broom and lumping trailers and doing recoup. all the dirtiest jobs I could find, the worst jobs I could find, to try to run them off, and they didn't leave. So I figured they might have a chance of making it.
Yeah.
And then they became warehousemen, worked their way up to be a supervisor, and then managers, and now they're partners in the business. So the good thing was they learned it from the ground up, inside out, and there's nobody can pull the wool over their eyes about what's going on out on the floor, because they've been there, done that.
Yeah, that's right. They can literally look at the forklift driver, anyone in the building, and say, "I've done that, right? I've done that job, and I've been there." So that's great. And you can see the advantages, of course. Having that co-pilot with you, that source of strength, your wife with you. You can see how there's an advantage to that. But then again, on the other side, there's no break either, right? You get home, you're probably still talking about the business, and so there's challenges that go with it both ways. Jeremy, I'm going to ask you a similar question to Jordy. So when you were growing up, obviously, your father has this business. When did you decide that, this is the step you want to take and continue on with the business?
Let's see. We'll go back. First, I want to just commend Jordy. I think it's awesome to hear people passionate about serving the Lord and everything he was doing with his Christian ministry. So good for you, bud. That sounds amazing.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So good for you. But it was not by design that I got into the business. I was actually running a retail clothing store and doing some other things, and I had a pretty bad injury. I was in the middle of going to a junior college and around our local town. And when I broke my leg and I was on crutches for about 18 months, I really couldn't walk the floor of this retail place that I was working at. But I also wasn't allowed to just sit on my dad's sofa. So it may have been a little different approach than what Jordy's dad had. It was more of a, well, you're going to come to work. And I had a cast from my toes up to my hip. And I really couldn't move. But that's when he made me a janitor over at that 48,000 square foot warehouse.
You can still push a broom.
As you may have heard him say, that was a flour warehouse. So when you have a cast and you're lumping bags of flour and sweeping up that stuff, the amount of flour that gets inside of that cast, and then the heat and the moisture, it's basically like baking a cake inside of your leg. It was fantastic. So yeah, it took me a while to catch on to the fact that it was going to be something I was going to do from a long-term standpoint. I think when I came on, it was really just more of a stopgap, help him out. I needed something to do. He didn't want me on the sofa. It took a little while. We'll say that. It probably took several years of really figuring out what I wanted to do. And in that process, I met my now wife, Jen, and decided that I was also going to go on a mission. So I left for 6 months after being working there for about a couple years. I joined him in 1996. Started getting pretty serious with Jen and decided I was going to go on a missions trip. So I spent 6 months over in Eastern Europe and just kind of spent some time figuring out what I was going to do, both from a business standpoint and a life standpoint with Jen, if it was the right time to move forward, get married. Having that 6 months in Romania and Budapest kind of gave me some time to feed back into the communities out there and also just figure out where I was heading. And when I got back, I think that's really when it set in for me that I wanted to start a family. And in order to do that, I also wanted to be able to support them the right way. I felt like running with my dad in prison was a good long-term option. It was a little different again than anything I'd planned, but it was, I was watching my parents go through the business and how hard they were working it all the time. And I knew if I could get in and figure out how to work real hard and do well, that we could continue to develop that business, not just for my parents, but also for myself and for our entire family. So while I'm second generation, I joined them about 3 years after the opening, and then it was, we've just been moving along since then. I won't say there haven't been little bumps along the way since coming back. But I think I really got serious about it in 2000, 2001, and have been learning ever since. And I've been blessed to have good mentors like my father, like our VP of operations, who's been with him for well over 30 years, pouring into me. And then obviously folks through the IWLA that I've met. So it's been fun, and it's been challenging, but rewarding.
And who's the VP of operations? Give him a shout out.
Mike Mayo was our VP of operations.
Okay, great. And the bumps along the way, that's kind of where I want to go with the interview now at this point. So, Jordy, what is it like when you, because okay, your father runs the business, obviously has certain ways. Now you're a next generation, you're going to have some new ideas, some new things. I'm sure there's some back and forth, but how do you deal with something when you fundamentally disagree on something? How does that work with you and your father?
Yeah, how does it work? So I don't have a long list of examples. Firstly, I'll say this: it is great to have other family businesses in your network so you can compare notes. There's a bunch of peers that have had a good experience, and then there's two peers, one in our industry and one outside of the industry, and they describe a scenario where their father, in both of them in their 70s, comes into the office and starts asking questions and getting involved, and they feel undermined. And I'm not sharing that to focus on the negative, but I can't relate to that story. And why is that? What is it in my dad's thinking that said, this is my baby, but I know the best thing for me to do is to let him make some mistakes and give it over to him. Like, I'm still trying to figure out and analyze how I'm going to do that with my kids. Like, I don't understand, that approach that he took, and I know it wasn't easy for him to do it. I think one of the things is I'm part of like a CEO group in Canada. It's called Tech TEC, and he was part of a group the last 10 years. And I think looking back, he had that group and he was able to have some accountability to let go, because it's one thing to have that as an idea, but it's another thing in actuality when something comes along and concerns you, like a financial piece or how a situation was handled. And so he has been very diligent in keeping hands off. Probably once a month, there's one or two things that we're talking about that he's kind of wants to get briefed on. But the more information I give him, maybe like on a weekly basis. So I would say that part is going good. What I don't have is a story how we were yelling at each other, saying, you never loved me and believed in me, and you're constantly going over top of me. We don't have one of those office stories. But one thing that was kind of funny looking back was we had a committee back maybe in 2023, and the committee was, okay, how do we do the succession well? And we brought in someone who was doing some social media. We brought in HR, and then there was one other person. And we realized in this meeting that where things were leading was we should do a succession party, not call it a retirement party. And it should be clear that Terry's stepping back and Jordy's stepping in. And somehow the word retirement came up. And my dad wasn't ready for that word because both of how it sounds, and he probably didn't want to be associated with what retirement means in terms of working on your lawn and going golfing, because that's not him. He's chairing 3 boards already as the outgoing president that have nothing to do with Will's transfer. So he's got very, very meaningful life, and he set that up before he stepped back. So in this meeting we realized that there wasn't a lot of comfort in that moment with having a party, and how could it not be a retirement party? And it was funny watching the non-family members in the room kind of realize, okay, this is obviously a meeting that needs to happen. Another follow-up family meeting needs to happen outside of this, and for this to go forward. So we've only had probably on one hand where we've put a staff member in an awkward situation because we realized there was a disagreement. And really, what's the staff going to do if family disagrees? So I'm very thankful we haven't had a lot of those. And I think it's strategic on my dad's part that he had some accountability around what does it look like to let go. And he knew, and I knew that if he were to hold on, for years coming forward, it probably wouldn't be as fun for me based on where my thoughts and ideas and leadership was. So it takes 2 to tango, and it takes a committee outside of each of the individuals to make it work, in my opinion. Because if you don't have that, then you're just left to your own thoughts. And where do your thoughts lead? What's in it for me, and how do I don't think it's not about how do I stay in control, but you just got to have some accountability to your thinking on how to share this. So yeah, that was the one event that happened that was the most uncomfortable I've seen 2 staff members, but thankfully there's not a lot of those.
That's good. Yeah, and I imagine, there's so many of these family-owned businesses, whether they're warehouses or, grocery stores, whatever the case is across the country, that there's similar people who are listening to this that are thinking, that there's some people that maybe it landed that way, and then there's some people that did have the blow it out fights and have a tough time making it work because it's your family, right? And you've got a relationship with your family, and it's a business that needs to be run the right way, right? And so there's that conflict that can happen. So Jerry, tell us a little bit about that. What kind of go off of what Jordy said, just stepping back a little bit as you get a little older. How's that been? Like taking your foot off the pedal a little bit. Do you do that, or where are you at in that journey?
Yeah, and just to sort of give some background to it, the one of the things that you need when you start a business and as you try to grow a business is you need to have a real entrepreneurial spirit and drive, because that's what leads you to establishing and growing a business. So that's a good and a bad thing, because as an entrepreneur, you're making all these decisions from when are we going to buy toilet paper to what am I going to do with this customer and everything in between, managing cash, managing legal, managing leases, everything. And so it's a benefit to get it started. And then it comes a point where you have to start saying, okay, now it's gotten to a size to where running strictly in an entrepreneurial mode is not what's best for the business. So you need to get more structure, which entrepreneurs typically hate. You need to get more structure into it for other people being involved in the business. And
go ahead.
And we've just been very blessed with Mike that Jeremy was talking about, worked with us for years. And when our boys got into business, I did not manage them. I got Mike and said, Mike, they're going to work for you. And if you don't make them work, I'm going to get rid of you. So you've got to take care of them, and you make sure you train them up right, because it's tougher in a father-son, father-child, boy or girl relationship than it is if there's somebody else that is helping guide them along. So that worked well for us, and it's what I look at in understanding that moving away from that straight entrepreneurial environment into a more structured environment. That's certainly where Jeremy and Zach and Mike has played a part in that as well. Have come in, and I look at myself. In fact, I've thought about changing my card from chairman to pile watcher, and I just try to watch how things are going, and make sure they're going to step in some piles. That's the way I learned. That's the way they're going to learn. I just want to make sure it's a pile that only goes up to their ankles and not to their eyeballs. And so if I see a deep one coming, then I'll say something. Otherwise, I know that they'll make it through it, and it's something that's just part of the learning process. So we've been very blessed. Maybe Jeremy can remember some times when we've had some pretty tough discussions. The only tough discussions that I remember is it's applied across all of our team, and that's got to take care of the customer and making sure that we maintain the highest standards of customer service. But it's been enjoyable for me, because I get to sit back and look and see the fruits of our labor from the early days, and also see the fruits of the labor of what Jeremy and Zach and the team is doing today and how they continue to build a business. It's ironic. One of the sessions, and maybe Jeremy can remember more of the year, but it's probably 10 plus years ago, at an IWLA conference when it was in San Francisco, we had a workshop with a guy who talked about family businesses and how do you handle a family business. And their model was, he had two boys in the business, and every year they got together and they had a meeting, and they said, okay, mark down on a piece of paper. Nobody else sees it. Just mark down buy or sell. And so they'd do that, and then they'd exchange it and see what everybody wrote down. And if everybody said buy, that meant that they're happy with the way things are going in the business, and they stayed with it, and nothing really changed. If one said sell, then it's okay. Why did you say sell? What's making it? Why are you saying we need to look at selling? And that hit me. And Jeremy, and I think Zach was with us too. But anyway, I know Jeremy was. And we were down in the lobby of the Fairmont Hotel. This is when they were much younger, and they were nowhere near at the level they are in the business today. But I got them, and I said, you know what? If somebody came to me right now and said buy or sell, I'd have to say sell. Not because I want to, because I don't. I don't want to, but because you're not stepping up to the level that you need to run the business. And in order for us to maintain the business, you got to step up and take over things that I'm doing and grow in managing the business as well as growing the business. So that was a eye opener for me, that IWLA conference, and I think that helped a lot. And I think the boys felt more comfortable in understanding that I'm not going to get pissed off if they try to get more involved in managing the business. That's really what I need. Yeah. So ultimately, we had an experience with our daughter in Africa where she had a stroke, and I had to leave for 2 months. So I was out of the country for 2 months, and they had no choice but to step up. And so it was, I told them both, I said, you owe your sister a gratitude of thanks, because she pushed you because of what happened with her. She pushed you to have to step up. But it's been good, and it's fun for me to be able to see them growing in the business and growing the business.
Yeah, interesting perspective. That's Jerry Van Pufflin. We're also joined by Jeremy Van Pufflin and Jordy Wills, and we're talking about running a family-owned business and the challenges that come along with it. We are coming up on some time here, so we don't have too much more time left. But Jeremy, I'll give you a chance here to just chime in, talk a little bit about maybe what we talked about is the balancing act of trying to grow the business, but also respecting, the work that's been done before. You mentioned earlier, it sounds like you've kind of realized where your sweet spots are at. You're not growing faster than you think you can. Talk a little bit about that, and then any conflict, if you want to touch on that topic too.
Sure. Yeah. So going back to the Fairmont and what Jerry's saying, that was well over 10 years ago. Gosh, that's got to be pushing back at least 15 to 20 years at this point. I took over as president in 21, and we bought his partner out in 2014. So we've been partners in the company for 11 years. So definitely well over 10 years ago where we had that conversation. I think maybe I took it differently than he was meaning it, where he was pushing us to get more involved. I was thinking, oh man, like I'm sitting here thinking this is a family business. It's going to keep on rolling as a family business. And it definitely came as a shot across the bow of that's not the way that this thing's going to work. This is my business. And if you want to be a part of this as a family member, then you've got a lot to do to get to where I want you to be to make this a family business. So while it was definitely a family-run company, it was not a family business at that point in time. We had Zach and I had some growing up to do and some things we needed to do in order to be fully engaged. So that what I guess one of the things that was said at those points in time was so that we were managing the business and the business wasn't managing us. And I think making that distinction to the place where we were getting in and being able to run it, it was, like I said, it was a shot across the bow. I understood what it was, and we pushed forward to get into that position of being able to manage the business versus just maybe riding along thinking that, hey, this is going to be ours someday. So it took a fair amount of work. It took understanding the direction that we needed to head and clear communication from Jerry on, hey, this is really where I want you to get to. and then applying everything he was asking for. So I think we did that. Clearly, we're in a different spot today, and some of those growth things, it was just really getting involved with hitting conferences, hitting different shows, making sure that the word was always out. From a marketing standpoint, it was being on the road. I think as I took over and got more into the sales role, I jumped into the director of business development role back in probably 2010-ish, 2011. Really started working on the sales aspect versus the warehousing and operation side. And we started to see the fruits of that with some different groups we're in, but it took a lot of travel. Like operations takes a lot of focus, being on the floor every day, making sure that you're pounding away at doing everything right, and that there's a lot of attention to it. Putting a lot of attention to the sales and the travel and going to see people and meeting up at shows and going to different conferences. It took a lot of work, and it took a lot of work on the sales side and the phone calls and following up and switching up our marketing programs and how we were addressing people and what we were doing to capture leads, and all that kind of stuff was kind of getting built out, which really helped. And then I think heading into 2014, when we were looking at buying my dad's partner out, Paul Vander Overt, at that time, and becoming partners in the company, there was another fine line drawn in the sand, and it was one of, hey, this is great. You guys can now be partners in the business, but if you ever want to make any money, you better start growing this thing, because you've got this debt to pay over the course of the next several years to acquire this company. It was not a here you go, now you're a partner in the company, but here's your loan that you're going to be paying back over the next several years. And if you feel like making any money in addition to paying off that loan, well, it comes through growth and growth alone. So just additional focus again on getting out there and meet people and growing the company from a sales and revenue standpoint, so that we could cover the note that we had to make sure that Paul was paid off and we could effectively buy the shares of the company, and then also hopefully put a little bit of cash in our pocket. Since then, we put together a plan in 2014 that was double in 5 years, double in 5 years after that, and then double again in 5. From 2014 to 2019, we were able to do that and double the size of the company. From 2019 to 2024, we came up just shy on the second double. We were hoping to get a little higher up than we ended up, but we ended up about 15% shorter than we were hoping to on the second double, but still great growth. And then we'll see where we go from here. 24 to 29, well, that's our last 5 of that initial 15-year plan. I think we're on track. It's getting harder as we've gotten bigger to grow, and so changing some of the things that we need to change, or bringing in additional help outside and growing sales and different things are some focus points for us that started in 25, so that we continue to grow in that direction. But it's we're going to have to continue to evolve to continue growing.
That's great. That's absolutely great. It's really a real pleasure listening to your guys' perspectives on a family-owned business and the challenges, the adaptations you guys have had to make over the years. It's incredibly important to be nimble in today's business world, and especially the 3PL industry. It's one thing I know I've learned here over the 6 months that I've been here at IWLA. And I appreciate the plug from Jerry there too about the convention too, because and Jordy mentioned it, and I know you've been a big part of planning the convention too, Jeremy, but those opportunities to talk to other family-owned business leaders, right? To talk to the sons and to have these conversations. It's probably hard to value what that actually is, but just having those opportunities, the IWLA convention provides that, right? A platform to be able to have those conversations, right?
It's the only way that I was able to start my business was the guidance and mentorship from folks that I met within the industry, and that were my mentors. My first it was AWA back then, was in 1974 in Colorado Springs, was the first annual conference I went to. And it's an amazing conference from the standpoint of the willingness of people who could be competitors, but are very friendly and are willing to share experiences and help you grow, help you learn.
That's the best commercial we could have for the convention. I appreciate it, Jerry, because those are candid words, and I've heard the same thing from so many people. That's why I'm really eager to get to this conference and get to talk to people, because they've said the exact same thing. You might be competitors, you might be in the same market, but pretty much everyone's willing to share everything except pricing, pretty much, and all the challenges that go along with running a business. All right, we are out of time. It was a really good pleasure to speak with you, but I'll just go around the horn one quick time, and I'll just ask you to keep it to maybe a sentence or two, but just any advice to anyone running a family-owned business, something that you can throw out there, says maybe someone who's listening who either is running one or is going to maybe thinking about passing the torch, whatever the case may be. I'll start with Jordy, and then we'll go around the horn one last time. So Jordy, any advice for anyone out there?
Sure. Yeah. So what I got written up above my goals is have fun, keep it simple, and trust God. And when all the busyness happens and the chaos, just kind of going back to that and then refocusing on the goals. And the second thing is you got to have a network outside of your own company to bounce stuff off of.
Excellent. Jerry, what do you have?
Well, picking up on the network outside of the company, and again, going back to the IWLA, there is no better conference or network than you can have than the IWLA. And I've been involved in CSCMP work, multiple industry associations. Nothing comes close to IWLA and what you get out of plugging in there and just being able to talk to peers about issues that you're having and share how to solve them.
I might clip that out for a commercial, Jerry. I appreciate that. And Jeremy, what do you have?
Yeah, I'll echo what they say as far as the peer networks and being involved in those groups. But I think when it comes directly to a lot of the conversation we had today around succession planning and family businesses, just remember to be humble. You don't know what the other party's thinking. It's you got to have open conversations. But in order to have those open conversations, there's got to be a serious level of humility and understanding that nothing's given, but it should be earned. And so if you stay humble and work hard, then it makes all these transitions a lot easier.
Excellent. That was the voice of Jeremy Van Pufflin, who's the president of Prism Logistics. We also have been speaking with Jerry Van Pufflin, the chairman and founder of Prism Logistics, and Jordy Wills, president of Wills Transfer Limited. Gentlemen, it was a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time, and we'll see you at convention.
Thanks, JC.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. See you in Tucson.
Thank you.
Take care.